Someone stands at a grocery checkout without their loyalty card scanned, and the total comes out noticeably higher than the shelf price they remembered seeing. They dig through their wallet, find the little plastic card, hand it over, and the price magically drops back down. From the shopper's perspective, this feels like a reward for loyalty, a small discount earned by being a repeat customer. But the actual mechanism working underneath that transaction has very little to do with rewarding loyalty in any meaningful sense, and understanding what a loyalty card actually does for the store that issued it changes what that little plastic card really represents. It's a strange thing to consider that the small discount at the register might be the least important part of the entire transaction, a friendly, visible incentive sitting on top of something far larger and far less visible happening underneath it every single time that card gets scanned. Grocery loyalty programs are framed almost universally as savings programs, member prices, weekly specials, personalized coupons, all presented as a benefit flowing from the store to the shopper. And in a narrow, technical sense, that's true. Scanning the card usually does lower the price at checkout. But according to research published by retail analytics firms and academic studies on loyalty program economics, the primary value grocery chains extract from these programs isn't the modest goodwill of repeat business. It's the extraordinarily detailed, itemized purchase history that gets generated every single time a card gets scanned, data that retailers then use, sell, and monetize in ways that have almost nothing to do with the small discount the shopper receives in the moment. This distinction matters because it reframes the entire relationship. The shopper isn't simply a customer receiving a periodic discount. They're also, simultaneously, a continuous source of a data product that gets built one scanned item at a time, whether or not that second role was ever made explicit anywhere in the sign-up process. Let's start with the basic mechanics of what actually happens the instant a loyalty card gets scanned, because the transaction that matters most isn't the one happening at the register. Every scanned purchase gets tied to a persistent shopper identity, building a detailed, longitudinal record of exactly what that specific person buys, how often, in what quantities, and how their purchasing habits shift over time. Whether they're stocking up for a new baby, buying more single-serving items after a household size change, or gradually switching from generic to premium brands in a specific category. The technical process works like this. Point-of-sale data gets captured item by item at checkout, tagged to the loyalty account number, and aggregated into a purchase history database that grows more valuable with every additional data point, since predictive accuracy about a specific household's future purchasing behavior improves substantially the longer that household's history gets tracked. This is where an invisible business model takes over, one that most shoppers never see explicitly described anywhere on the loyalty card sign-up form. Retailers use this granular purchase data internally for demand forecasting, inventory management, and highly targeted promotional offers, but a substantial portion of the real financial value comes from selling anonymized or aggregated versions of this data to consumer packaged goods manufacturers, market research firms, and data brokers who use it to understand market share trends, test new product placement strategies, and target advertising with far more precision than general demographic data alone could ever provide. A retailer that operates loyalty programs across thousands of stores is effectively sitting on one of the most detailed, real-time pictures of consumer purchasing behavior in an entire economy, and that dataset itself has become a genuine, standalone revenue line for many large retail chains, separate from, and sometimes comparable in value to the actual grocery margins on the products being sold. There's a related invisible mechanism tied to how the discount itself typically gets structured. A meaningful share of loyalty program discounts function similarly to the everyday high, frequently discounted pricing pattern seen across other retail categories, where the non-member price gets set artificially high specifically to make the member price feel like a genuine reward, rather than the member price representing an actual reduction from a fair, neutral baseline. This means a significant portion of shoppers who don't sign up for the loyalty program aren't simply missing out on a bonus. They're specifically being charged a price that was structured to look inflated by comparison, creating pressure to enroll that has nothing to do with the store's actual cost structure and everything to do with maximizing the number of shoppers whose purchase data becomes available for collection. Two real-world patterns make this concrete. Multiple major grocery chains have disclosed in privacy policy filings and investor communications that they operate dedicated data analytics or media divisions specifically built around monetizing loyalty program purchase data, some generating hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising and data licensing revenue annually. A business line that exists entirely separate from the traditional grocery retail margin most people assume is the store's primary source of profit. A second pattern shows up in how consumer packaged goods companies use this data directly, purchasing access to anonymized purchase pattern data specifically to identify which households are likely to switch brands soon, which shoppers respond most strongly to specific discount thresholds, and how to time promotional offers around predictable purchasing cycles like running out of a household staple, turning loyalty card data into one of the most precisely targeted advertising tools available anywhere in the consumer goods industry. Several of these retail media divisions have grown quickly enough in recent years that industry analysts now cover them as a distinct, high-margin business segment in earnings reports, separate from the grocery operation itself, with growth rates that in some cases have outpaced the store's core retail business by a wide margin. This challenges the common assumption that a loyalty card program exists primarily to reward customer loyalty and pass savings back to frequent shoppers as a form of appreciation. In reality, the discount functions more like the price of admission for participating in a much larger, more valuable data generation system, one where the shopper's detailed purchase history is the actual product being created, with a modest checkout discount serving as the incentive needed to generate that data at sufficient scale and consistency to make it commercially useful. The friction point isn't that shoppers are being deceived about receiving a discount. They genuinely do pay less at checkout. It's that the sign-up experience frames the exchange as loyalty rewarded, when a more accurate framing would be personal purchase data exchanged for a modest, partially artificial discount. Zoom out, and this same small user-facing benefit funds a much larger data business. Pattern shows up constantly across other free or discounted digital and retail services. Social media platforms provide free access to communication tools, while the actual business model depends on detailed behavioral and advertising data generated by that usage. Free mobile apps offering simple utility functions frequently monetize primarily through location data, usage pattern tracking, and behavioral advertising rather than through any direct payment from the user at all. In every one of these cases, the visible user-facing offer, a discount, a free service, a convenient app, exists specifically because it generates a data asset valuable enough elsewhere in the business to make providing that visible benefit financially worthwhile in the first place. The consistent pattern across all of them is that the free or discounted thing was never really the product being sold. It was the mechanism built to reliably produce the actual product, a detailed behavioral record, at a scale and consistency that would be far harder to generate any other way. So the next time a loyalty card gets scanned at checkout and the price drops, it's worth remembering what that small discount actually represents within the store's broader business model. It probably isn't primarily a reward for being a loyal, valued customer in the sentimental sense the marketing suggests. It's more likely the visible, user-facing portion of a much larger data transaction, one where a detailed, ongoing record of personal purchasing behavior is quietly being built with every scan, a record that for many large retailers has become genuinely valuable in its own right, entirely separate from whatever specific groceries happen to be in the cart on any given trip.